plant matter is the objective, because everything else that we want, like profitability and ecosystem health, that all comes from that process of turning rain into biomass. So I guess that's what we're focusing on.
And because we have such little or low rainfall, we really want to capitalise on every drop that we get.
Like our evaporation rate is 5 times our rainfall. And so when rain lands on the surface, if it's not captured by a carbon or by a plant or something and retained, then it can evaporate again. And so having the soil surface ready to absorb the water, but then also having some organism there to capture it and hold it against evaporation, is kind of the key to keeping the water there long enough that it can work for us. We've been able to find some solutions that have been very effective for us in our system without having to spend a lot of money, just by modifying some of the machines we've already got. That's our first go at a combination disc chain, prickle chain, kind of a low disturbance, very shallow. Did a really good job of a full cut weed control without working down into the bioactive zone. It's only working that layer of ground which gets baked, over 60 degrees in summer, and it's not disturbing the refuge underneath where the microbes are hiding. Things that work low draft, that can cover a large area quickly, are really, really important, because we have such a small window of opportunity to work with we might get a light rainfall event.
We're talking, 3 or 4 mils.
Yeah.
It's not much.
Yeah.
We can get that to work for us if we can do it.
Because you don't
the
need
right
much
way
to trigger in your sands,
No,
do
That's
you?
right.
No.
Not
Yeah.
Yeah. Mother Nature wants to cover up pretty
Yep.
good.
Yeah.
Yep.
This paddock is a fairly sandy paddock, which we have had trouble keeping a ground cover on in the past. And so we started seeding a cover crop on it whenever we had a good enough season to get an early cover. And what we're seeing now is naturally that it's covering itself even in drier years than it used to. This paddock's very variable. It's got good soil and poor soil in it, and this is the worst of it. So this is the kind of light sand that we're having trouble with. But we're seeing that we're getting these good roots happening down in there now. These roots that are showing up down in the soil now, which is sort of, I think, is the key with this stuff, is to get it to grow as much as we can. And we're getting that growth down at depth. So keeping that growth happening and then stopping the plants from going to reproductive stage. We do that by either grazing it heavily or by slashing it. And because we don't have enough animals to do the whole farm that way, we tend to do a lot of slashing now on these cover crop paddocks. This type of soil would normally be quite bare, but letting it grow and letting it cycle, letting it produce biomass is like this stuff here is from last season, so that's good to have that still here on the ground and giving us some cover. Some of the benefits we've noticed from growing cover crops, and particularly from slashing, is that we're getting more of the finer rooted annual plants that are giving us a denser ground cover starting to dominate, rather than the woodier type perennials which would claim a larger space and do their thing, but they leave a bare bit of ground around them. So by slashing, we get the faster cycling species taking over earlier. The first economical benefit that we saw was just that we had more feed for the animals. I think the mind shift that I've had to go through to use this method has been to invest in the soil for the soil's sake rather than for just in the next crop. I would have probably seen it as a waste to slash good growth onto the surface of the soil just for the sake of putting armour on the soil in the past, but nowadays I see that as really, really important because it does pay off. And in future, I'm hoping we can improve our stocking rate by having more cover over summer means we got more feed. This is the Shelterbelt that was seeded about 20 years ago, combination of seeds and seedlings. Like a lot of this saltbush would be second or third generation. In droughts, we have run the sheep and the cattle through here just to do a bit of like a shrub grazing thing. A lot of the plants that are in here are actually very good for animal health, like the melaleucas and callistemons and the eucalypts as well, but also the acacias. Some of those are really important for worms, intestinal worms in sheep and cattle. The main reason that these were put in is for windbreak on these soils, and one of the first things that was seen when they sort of got established was that the trees sheltered birds, and birds came in from the national parks and travelled along the tree lines and sort of just moved into the farm. Any flowers in here that attracts, parasitic wasps and predatory insects for aphids and that are good things. The tree lines do provide an ecological benefit in that the birds look after the sheep a fair bit in terms of fly control, and then the insects look after the crops in terms of aphid control. I really appreciate these tree lines, like a real nice thing to see. So we were able to source some compost from a local piggery, and we shifted it on site as raw manure, and it sort of heated on site, and then we spread it on the paddock here ourselves and worked it in, and then seeded this crop on it. So it's done wonders for the soil. It's been really good.
It wasn't as much as what we had expected it to be, but it turned out to be about a tonne.
A bit over a tonne a hectare.
Yeah. So,
which is enough, make a difference?
Yeah. I mean, ideally you would do more, but that's what we had to work with. So we thought we'd do a smaller scale and just see that actually, how that played out before we then look at doing more.
And we had bought commercial compost before, but the freight plus the material was just too expensive, which is why we went local to try and make some on site.
Yeah, it's certainly looking well covered compared to what it has in previous years.
Yeah, the last few years.
The big difference that the compost has made.
We've tried a few things, different things over the years, probably something different every year. We've wasted a lot of money that way. We also learnt some valuable lessons.
I think that's been really important in our enterprise, is that we've had to be a little bit flexible. We can't necessarily just rely on one tool or one system, just having that scope, I guess, and being able to test and tweak and modify.
Being a fitter and having worked in engineering and maintenance, and I tend to look for mechanical solutions, products and I guess silver bullets. And that was something that I had to change to move away from that product-based solution to more of a systems thing. After trying so many different things and observing how they work, is that it's never about one machine, or never about one product. It really is a whole system, and it's about how the different elements are brought together by the manager, and really think from a landscape level, from a soils level, what does this need to work the right way?